speaker. He is somebody who's a lover of chai, marketing, and other things. The next marketer always takes pride in the fact that he's employee number 8 at Freshworks. Years ago, he arrived at HubSpot's inbound event very early just so he could get the front row tickets to witness Rand Fishkin's talk. Today, he is a speaker listed alongside him. What is it they say about life coming a full circle? Today at Unmute, for Stand Out with Signaling, it's Sairam Krishnan, you all. Hello, Sai, how are you?
Hi. Hey, I'm very good, Akshay. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you well, Sairam. I will let you take over the stage. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sairam Krishnan, and I'm here to speak to you about standing out with signaling. And so this is what I've been doing over my career. Like I've led marketing for like several SaaS companies in India. I started my career at Freshworks, and then I was at Wingify for a bit, where I led marketing for a particular product. And then I went back to Freshworks to lead corporate marketing, part of which a story I'll tell you today. And right now, I am the market in residence at Accel, which is one of the world's leading venture capital firms, and I work with a lot of portfolio companies. So it's a very exciting role, and sort of leads into what we're going to talk about today, which is standing out with signaling. So what is signaling really, right? So let me just sort of tell you what I mean by that. So a few years ago, I was leading marketing at this SaaS company. Now the company had a couple of products. It had another product which was the flagship, and it was the cash cow, but it had not been growing for some time, right? So the marketing for this product was completely inbound driven. The company spent very little on AdWords, but it wasn't growing at all. So we did what everyone does at such times, right? We had really serious meetings. And in one of those like really serious meetings, a young analyst went through the numbers and had a genius comment, sort of like he thought it was genius, right? No leads were being directly attributed to the blog, which obviously meant that the blog was a waste of time, right? Everyone in the room agreed very gravely, and so we stopped working on the blog basically. We diverted the resources, wrote SEO pages instead, wrote copy for ads, and completely ignored the blog. Within just about a couple of months, the numbers started dropping and dramatically started dropping. Everybody panicked. We set up some in-depth interviews immediately. Like, what do we do? Like, we set up some interviews to see what the hell is going on, right? What emerged was that though no one was actually signing up directly from the blog was seen as a marker for quality, right? If it was updated and there was a great blog post up, it told prospects and customers that this was a company that could be trusted. The quality of the writing meant that this company cared, and if they cared, it meant that their product would be good. So in short, the blog was a signal, right? It was telling prospects that this was something good, something positive. And when that blog, the signal was taken away, the numbers dropped. So this is what I mean when I say signaling. And it's one of those things that good marketers like sort of intuitively understand, and not so good ones completely don't. And it gets explained away more as taste sometimes or talent, but it's actually a little bit more than that. And there are ways to master it. And that's what we'll be talking about today. And that's what I mean by signaling, right? So why though? Like, why signaling at all, right? The best definition of this was I found it in Rory Sutherland's like marketing book. It's a blockbuster of a book. You should definitely read it, called Alchemy. He defines it as the need to send reliable indications of commitment and intent, which can inspire confidence and trust. Note the words though. Indications is what he says, meaning you have to show, not tell. And inspires the other word he uses, which is the other party has to intuit the signal. If you have to explain, it's not a signal. But what are you doing when you're consciously sending a signal, right? You're attracting attention. That's what you're doing. Like, when I was in college and I had longer hair, I used to flick my hair when a pretty girl walked by. I mean, I don't know if it was effective, but it was certainly a signal. Because if you don't send a signal, you don't help your prospect choose. And as we well know, what happens when choices baffle a customer, they take the safe option. They don't do anything at all, right? Which is exactly what we marketers want to avoid. What I want to show you today is a glimpse into the different kinds of signaling that we as marketers selling software can do. And like I said, I have to show you, not tell, right? Firstly, you have to signal what you are, right? In Alchemy, the book, Rory Sutherland writes of a cafe near his place in London, right? Which actually passed through a series of owners, all of who tried very hard to make it work, but could not. Sutherland just didn't understand. So there was good food, there was great coffee, and the location was near offices. It was great. Why wasn't it working, right? So it eventually did. After the fourth owners, right, did something that none of the earlier ones had. They made up this small area, outside the cafe into a sitting space, and made sure that there was a sign showing that coffee was available. And when there was sitting space, people are always out there, drinking coffee, and at least there's like a buzz there. That's all that was needed. Customers poured in. The cafe was a roaring success. Sutherland used to drink coffee there every day. So, what is the difference? Like, it's the same coffee. Like, there's nothing that's dramatically changed, right? What had these owners done differently? They had signaled what they were clearly, a cafe. That's what I meant. Signal what you are, right? There was no confusion. This is a cafe. You'll find coffee here. That is enough, right? If you remember that there were a couple of years ago, there was a huge, designer discussion on Quora, and that spilled over to Twitter, and there was a lot of discussions by designers, right? About why all SaaS websites were starting to look the same. It was a trending topic among designers for a while, right? They all got together, they were quite angry about it. They lamented the lack of imagination in marketing. They said marketers were creatively stunted these days. They did not understand design, and obviously we should all be fired immediately, right? So it was hugely entertaining, the discussion, but it was also wrong, right? All SaaS websites tend to look more or less the same because we are signaling to you, the prospect. And because you expect SaaS websites to look a certain way, we are giving it to you, right? To make the thought process easier. We are signaling what we are. That's why all SaaS websites look the same, right? Um, Again, another one. Signal what you're like, right? This is quite important, and I have a great story for you on this. Back in 2011, I had just started my career at Freshdesk, uh, and we were a small startup at the time, and we had a Twitter run-in with then much larger company Zendesk. An independent analyst thought that we were too similar to Zendesk and that we were copying them, and he badmouthed us on Twitter. And quite ill-advisedly, Zendesk CEO Mikkel Swan, he barged in and he called Freshdesk a ripoff. So I was there in the room when all of this was happening, and all of that, and we were quite taken aback. But my own instinct at that time was to let it be, was to let the jibes be, right? It was a needless distraction, and who cares what random folks thought on the internet, right? Well, no. So my CEO, Girish Mathrubudam, understood the opportunity in front of us and he took it. He took the fight off Twitter, made a website, and laid out the entire conversation in black and white. He framed the altercation as a Freshdesk versus Zendesk scenario. And you know what happens when you frame things this way? X versus Y. People take sides, and they did. It was immensely embarrassing for Zendesk, but for a little 8 people startup, it was PR gold, right? But that wasn't the whole genius of the maneuver. By framing it as Freshdesk versus Zendesk, right? Girish told the world that Freshdesk was like Zendesk and that we were equals, when in reality we were definitely not. Right? Zendesk was a much larger company, and Freshdesk barely had any revenue. But the world didn't know that. They just saw this, they just saw this fracas happening. Right? They thought we were like Zendesk. So by framing the conversation the way that he did, Girish had signaled what Freshdesk was like, or at least what we wanted to be like. Right? It was genius. It worked out great for us. A small postscript to the story, to the signaling story. A few months ago, Freshworks went public on Nasdaq, and a few weeks ago, it went beyond Zendesk's market cap. So not bad for a bunch of Indian cowboys, right? Yeah. So again, the next one, signal your uniqueness, and this is also like very interesting. Customers understand what kind of brand you are, not by the things not by the things that you say, but by the things that you do, right? And every little interaction with the brand, or with news about it, informs that perception. This is very important to understand when designing campaigns or messaging, right? So that you signal your uniqueness to customers. Consider, for example, the greatest marketing campaign in B2B history, at least that's what I think, which is Salesforce's announcement of SaaS to the world, the No Software campaign. Mark Benioff did it. The target was Siebel and and other on-premise software companies, right? We know this campaign. All of us know this story. I'm not getting into it. But the taking over of Siebel's event and making sure that everyone heard the message was just one part. The other part was the audacity to do something like this itself, right? The storming of the citadel of Siebel, right, sent a signal that that Salesforce was not just a normal company. It was very unique and it was willing to shake things up, take a few risks, right? And a segment of customers immediately responded to that, and that was the initial kickoff for Salesforce. Um, in 2018, right, we at Freshworks did the exact same thing. Like, this was when I was leading brand and corporate marketing. We sort of like thought about this, and we designed this campaign, right? We flew a blimp around Salesforce Towers in San Francisco on Dreamforce weekend, right? It had Salesforce printed on it, and there was a story, but it was an immediate knowing nod to the original No Software campaign. Like, we knew what we were doing. It was meta, right? But we wanted customers to feel that way. The idea was that consumers could see the campaign and they equated our audacity with what Salesforce had done all those years ago, right? This was a signal too. Like, we trended on Twitter, on San Francisco Twitter for a couple of days. People took photos. We made a lot of news channels and all of that. But most of it all, it was a signal. We were also signaling our uniqueness the same way that Salesforce had done, all those years ago. Okay, signal what people want to see, right? Um, we know who this is, right? Elizabeth Holmes is one of the tech stories of our generation, right? She and Theranos promised much and promised a lot, but did not deliver. And she took the world for a ride along the way. So this begs the question: how did some of the smartest people in the world get taken in, by something like this? Because Holmes was a master at signaling to people about what they wanted to see, right? I'll give you an example of, like, what she had adopted from a lot of people. Like, Holmes adopted Steve Jobs' signature style of the black turtleneck, right? She frequently referred to, like, Theranos' systems as the iPod of healthcare. And she even nicknamed one of their systems the 4S, a nod to the iPhone. When and also, yeah, this is great. When she was ready to start designing the website, Holmes chose a Child Day because it was the same company Apple had used for their ads at that time. Was this all there was to it? No, of course not. But all these trappings sort of helped too. Some of the biggest investors in the world saw what they wanted to see, and they bought it, right? And they just she had signaled what they wanted to see. This is also why every startup a few years ago, when I say few, I mean a couple of years ago, the tech world is fast. Everything used to be AIML, right? Everybody had AIML startups, or they had AIML plugged into their startup or something. And these days, it seems everybody's talking about Web3, right? Investors are listening to these words, and startups are just simply giving it to them, right? They're simply giving them what they want to see. And that's what I mean when I say sometimes, you should too, right? So great. Um, I've told you a bunch of marketing stories today, right? Um, an attempt at sort of decoding great marketing, if you will, right? So when you're building a website or you're planning a campaign, or whatever stuff in marketing that you're doing, remember to ask yourself the question: what am I signaling, right? Um, I don't know what rabbit holes this question might lead you to, right? But it will definitely lead you to better marketing. Thank you so much for having me. I'll have, if there are any questions, we'll have those questions.